who we are always glad to see. She probably does not have a comment, but she does not. We'll close the public comment period without objection, folks. And we'll begin the work session, which is governmental funds, recommended capital as part of our budget journey that we will begin this evening. There's documents that have been attached. Probably all know that. You probably have them all, but in case you don't, they're attached there to the agenda. And I'm going to turn it over to the city manager to kick us off for the first part. Hello.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. How are y'all?
Pretty good.
Good. Good to see everybody. Nancy B., City Clerk, I just sent you the presentation that we'll start off with, just a couple slides to introduce everything in a general sense this evening, councilors. And then you should note, if you haven't already, that I did send you an email on Friday afternoon. And that email included a more detailed agenda for tonight with page number references so that you can follow along throughout the evening. And I also was hoping to dispense your pre-reading, if you were going to do any, to just a mere 50 pages of the 180-page document that encapsulates the city's capital investment program for this upcoming biennium. So if you haven't seen that email yet, or if you need me to resend it, just let me know. The city clerk will, once we get into that budget document, she will project that, and that way the public will be able to follow along with us. Or Nancy, if you'd like me to do that, I could also screen share, although I know you prefer the webinar format and for you to do that, so just let me know. Anyway, just to start off, Council, with some general remarks, I would tell you, as I did in that email Friday, that tonight we begin the review of our capital investment program, and we'll be looking specifically at the general government elements of our capital construction and capital asset investments. Those include general fund, the capital construction fund, the specific purpose tax fund, and the recreation center fund. We'll leave for our next meeting a look at capital investments that fall under our enterprise or business activities of the city, which, of course, as you know, are your utility fund for water, sanitary sewer, and for solid waste management. The thing I'll start off with telling you is that I really think for this biennium, which will start July 1st of 22 and run through June 30th of 2024, it's just really an intensive period for us as we invest in public works around the community. Public works, as I refer to them generally, are going to be those infrastructure projects that I know you're all very familiar with. But don't forget that it takes also a lot of equipment and fleet to accomplish and execute those public works projects, not only for capital construction, but also just general maintenance of all of that infrastructure. So things like sewer jet trucks would be a good example of that capital asset investment that we make under the guise of the entirety of the capital investment program. One thing I want to tell you, and if you have the chance to pre-read in your document, you'll see that in the last 2 years, we've tried to do a really good job in the budget book of illustrating for the public and for you, council members, how complex it is to execute these projects and to put forward kind of a decision-making matrix so that you can see some of the reasons for the way staff have recommended these projects to you, both in terms of the cost of them, but the sequential execution that's required over multiple years. And that's a pretty complex exercise that goes on at a staff level pretty much, honestly, every day of the year, but more intensely beginning in December, January, and February each year as we prepare the entire budget and the capital investment part of it, which you'll look at tonight for your consideration. One of the more complicating factors that I want to remind councilors and mostly the public of is that it's pretty complicated because we have a short construction season. 7,200 feet makes us more competitive in basketball, perhaps, but it certainly limits our ability to accomplish as much work in any given year as we might like to. The climate is a factor. We have a short construction season. And then one thing that's really notable this biennium, and I would say it's more notable in this upcoming biennium than it ever has been before, is that we're really having to think about how we work with and around this really large body of projects that is going on here within our community, but by partner entities such as the Wyoming Department of Transportation and most notably the University of Wyoming. University of Wyoming has been engaged, as you know, for years in some very intense vertical construction. What people don't always see is the horizontal underground construction that has to occur in tandem and in sequence with the erection of those buildings. And while what the university's been doing the last probably 4 or 5 years has been very intense, we're getting ready to start the construction of an entire new dormitory housing system on the campus. And I would venture to say fairly confidently this is the largest probably public works or public investment project that will occur in this community in probably 50 years. So that's a big one. It requires a lot of underground infrastructure, both owned by the city and by the university and private entities to support it. Next slide. So as we look at that capital investment program, I wanted to just note a couple things as we start off, because I suspect these are questions that you all have in your mind now, or you will have once we get into the detail of the presentation. What do we know? Well, we know that additional funding is starting just now to become available under the American Rescue Plan and the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. And then, of course, there's this whole other federal act, the Build Back Better, that is still in a sort of limbo. But while the public might see that an act has passed, it takes many months typically for that money to become available through grant and funding programs as federal agencies or state agencies that are administering these funds in a pass-through capacity develop the rules and the regulations surrounding how to access or apply for these funds. So we're watching this very carefully. We expect these monies to be becoming available, but as of yet, other than the ones that you're already aware, we don't have any significant funds that we see forthcoming. Of course, we're going to attempt to access those monies anywhere we possibly can. And I will share with you that I have put on retainer sort of a grant specialist who is reviewing for us on a weekly basis state and federal funding opportunities, because they are myriad, they are many, they're coming from every different direction, and they're coming at various paces depending on which federal or state agency they might be coming through. So we're looking at this, and I'll highlight it wherever we may in the budget think there's a potential for this funding. And then last thing I want to tell you is it may be necessary, frankly, to utilize some of those funds federally or statewide, if we see them trickle down to our level, to really complete some of our scheduled work. What we are experiencing right now here at the city is no different than what your business community is experiencing locally and nationally, and that is we're seeing supply chain limitations. Like literally, it's difficult to get certain things, and for things that you actually can get, prices are really moving rapidly up. I know Assistant City Manager Fieser is joining us remotely, I think, from Casper this evening. But Todd, I wonder if you could, just as a quick example for the council, talk about the experience we've been having with our air handling units here at City Hall, which, council, are pretty typical stuff that we just have to replace as a matter of ongoing maintenance every, 10 years or so.
Yeah, thanks, Janine. Mayor and council, I think you're all aware from the last project that we brought forward in the budget amendment, but approximately 4 years ago when we conducted the Haynes study and did some work and projecting costs, we had projected that the 2 MAUs at the city building would be around $75,000 for a $150,000 total project. And I believe when we got council to approve the bid and the budget amendment just here recently, that was $320,000, which is more than 100% increase in HVAC. And that's coupled with also big delays, and that we're seeing that we are sometimes 30 or 40 weeks out on delivery of these equipment, which means if we do have catastrophic failure, I'm not sure what that's going to look like. A lot of space heaters or box fans with wet towels hanging over them, maybe to keep people cool. I'm just kidding. We probably wouldn't do that. But, the the industry, as we've gone through the food pantry interfaith project, the HVAC and sheet metal industry alone has seen a price increase about every 60 days. So keep that in mind as we move through on some of these capital projects that are related to equipment replacement. It's going to be difficult, and our intent is to do as much as we can, but also defer the maintenance on the equipment that's not giving us as much trouble. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, thanks, Todd. I just wanted to let Todd relay that to you. It's just something that's been an ongoing conversation here in my office, but it will affect for this city, as for everybody, the cost and of our projects, and really how far our dollars will go. And that's just looking at supply chain in terms of like goods and whatnot. But when we actually look as well at services or the price of labor, we know that that is increasing as well. So those are things to keep in mind, and we are hopeful that we will see those federal monies trickle down to us for the reason I said that it might be necessary in order for us to stay on schedule with all of the work that we hope to accomplish. So that's just a quick overview, some high-level sort of points I wanted to make before we got into the budget book. And I guess while City Clerk Bartholomew loads up page 4 of the budget book, if you guys have questions now would be a good time. We're going to get into a little more detail now.
I guess that's an invitation for questions about the general overview there. I think what we heard about the concerns surrounding a lot of these projects and possible delays and how that's going to dictate how we prioritize things is disturbing news, but it's not surprising news, City Manager. And I wonder, too, if that might also inform a lot of the non-budget year budget adjustment type decisions the council may be making in 2023, because projects may need to get moved around from what we hope to plan for this year. They may need to be moved around, and I think the council understands that and perhaps might expect it a little bit more than we normally would.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I think that's very poignant. And the plan that we're going to put before you is probably very realistic for the first year of the biennium that'll start July 1st. But when we come back in that second year, about this time, 12 months from now, could be that based on the things we've discussed that we'll need to be looking at some modifications to our capital plan and the timing of those investments. That's kind of a good opportunity to open up the door for Jennifer Wade and Malia Brown to jump in here. I just want to point out that Malia and Jennifer and Todd and Brooks as well, and then our engineering folks, and you see Eric Japp with us tonight, have spent so much time really actually looking at our ideal capital investment plan, and then sort of modifying it to the point where we can put before you a plan tonight that we think is very realistic for year 1 and 2, frankly. But we all recognize there's a lot going on in the world right now that's outside of our control. So to the best of their ability, they've worked really hard to work with me and counsel me and do the research so that we could get something doable. With that, I'd identified that we'd start with pages 4 through 7. As I said, we do have Jennifer Wade here, our Administrative Services Director. And what I thought we would do is just orient the council very quickly to our fund structure. So if you would scroll to the next page, City Clerk, page 5, councilors, is a very quick primer on the city's fund accounting structure. We'll be focusing tonight, as I said, on our governmental funds, including the special revenue fund that is the rec center, and then our capital project funds, the capital construction fund, and the specific acts fund. We'll set aside those proprietary or enterprise business funds for the next meeting. If you have any questions about fund accounting or why it matters, or if you want to talk more about it, Jennifer is here, and she can certainly answer those questions, as could Malia.
I don't see anyone popping up just yet. So, yeah, and council members, I think I'm just going to say, just for the sake of flow, when Janine asks for questions, that's your cue. For a work session on the budget, I'm not going to sit there and recognize people at a time. When Janine, when you prompt us, Janine, just be ready for questions from across the council. Fair enough, council members? I'm sure there's no objection to that. Okay, great. Sorry about that.
That's great. And of course, you're always welcome to interrupt me as well, counselors. It's just always, I know we have a few newer council members. We have some more senior council members, and striking the right balance in the presentation can be challenging, just not being sure where everybody is in their recollection of things.
Understood.
So if we, yeah, thank you. If we go to the next page then, just want to share with you the process that we use, and I did touch on this just a minute ago. Internal to staff in my office and the budget team, we really start working on the budget in December. It's a really intense group effort amongst the senior management team as well as our pretty much mid-level division managers that works throughout the organization. So we start that in December. We end up sort of roughly around the beginning of April here in front of the council each year. And that internal budget timeline is backed up from a statutory deadline that the city has for adopting the budget in early June. I always point out as well to you that we take into careful consideration, or certainly I do, I know the rest of the team as well, the goals of the City Council as we try to pull together the budget. There are certainly management goals and things that we believe and I will recommend to you as needed expenditures, but we're also always looking at expenditures that are derived from the goals that the Council has. So next page just continues on with the recitation of those goals, and that's kind of just a quick basis for us to move forward. And as the clerk pulls up our next set of pages, which is page 29, I'm happy to take any questions or clarify anything, counselors. Okay. So, seeing no questions, we are ready to kind of look at the totality of our capital investments and construction plans. And so why I like this page is really the chart at the very top, Council. I think it's just a nice high-level view. If you look at the investments that we intend to make in streets, for instance, at the top row there, you'll see that we anticipate in this biennium a $13.2 million investment in streets. And then it's further broken down there to show you where those funds are coming. For instance, with streets, no grants or contributions, no loans or leases, specific purpose tax money of $6,611,149, and reserves or revenue of $6,594,940. So we're focused tonight on the everything from about, let's see, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth row down, city facilities on up. And then if you skip water, wastewater, and solid waste, which we'll go into detail about next meeting, you'll see fleet replacements. And I wanted to just spend a second talking to you about fleet replacements. Mentioned early on that capital investment includes obviously construction, whether it's horizontal underground construction of infrastructure or vertical construction of buildings or, say, water tanks. But it also includes our capital assets like our fleet. And this is that heavy equipment I mentioned early on, and also our vehicle inventory. We have been deferring fleet replacement for a couple of years now. And so if you look at the total recommended budget here of $9,047,646 for fleet replacement, that's significant, and it's much higher for a biennium than I think we've seen for a few biennial cycles. But I feel I need to point that out to you because this is the result of some deferred investment here. We now have some aging pieces of infrastructure and some aging vehicles. And so as I reviewed the fleet schedule with our fleet manager and with our chief operations officer and with our administrative services director, it was just really apparent we need to make a significant investment here so as not to get so far behind that we never get caught up, frankly. You can see that $3.33 million is planned to be loan or kind of lease purchase. And if you have any questions about the specifics of those kinds of transactions, Jennifer Malia can talk you through those. As you know, you see those on the council agenda pretty often when we bid a vehicle. And then we'll purchase it on kind of a lease to purchase arrangement. One of the things in here, there are a lot of vehicles. When we get to the detail, it's in here, and you all can look at that by car, by piece of fire apparatus, for example, or street heavy equipment. But I probably won't go over that in great detail unless you all have questions. And if you don't have those tonight and you look at it later and you want to come back with them in the future, you can always call us. But it is worthy, and it's noteworthy to me to draw out that big investment for you. And then if you skip water rights and protection, which is actually within the enterprise fund, there's a couple other categories of general fund expenditures here: traffic lights, some community enhancements, and studies, plans, and engineering services. I can take just a few seconds on the studies, plans, and engineering services. I think sometimes this surprises folks being in our capital investment program, but this is where we account for those large-scale studies, such as the citywide storm drainage specifications, things of that nature. That is also a little bit unusual, like the fleet assets that fall under this category of expenditure. So this is where you can see the big picture. In total, $116 million planned to be invested in infrastructure, most of which is hard infrastructure or capital assets and not studies, plans, or engineering services. And that's where I tell you this is a pretty robust plan. We have a lot going on the next going into our community, literally building our community. Okay, next page, City Clerk. So here's a breakdown by year of the projects that you're going to see, and these are really the construction-oriented projects, obviously. You can see in 2023 we have a whole bunch of projects, some of which, like the last one, the North Side Tank and Transmission Line, about the middle of the page. Some of these projects are like that project, and they've been underway for already 4 and 5 years. And we're getting now in 23 and 24 into the execution or the actual construction phase after years of engineering, securing easements, securing funding, etc. Anyway, they're all listed here for you. Then you can see kind of 24 and 25 and 26. Here's where you'll see the projects lined out for you in time. Next page includes the further out years of 2025 and 26.
City Manager, are the little gray and white blocks, do they represent a specific time chunk, or is that just kind of how we've laid out the graphics here?
Well, that's a good question, and I'm going to let Jennifer or Brooks answer that. I do not think they're specific time chunks, but maybe I'm wrong.
If it's just a no.
I don't know, Mayor. I believe it's a month.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah.
great. Okay.
I believe there's 12 in a year. Yeah, and that's actually how we're able to build the chart.
Okay, it's a little small on my screen because I'm looking at the Zoom and not the document that I should be looking at. But okay, that makes sense. Gives us kind of a close picture. Thank you. I'm sorry. Please continue.
Yeah, great question. And obviously, Mayor, I didn't even quite realize that. So good question.
Now we know.
Yeah, that's right. Street prioritization makes the bottom half of this page, and I wonder if this might be a good chance. I did ask for Public Works Director Brooks Webb to be here tonight, along with Malia Brown, our operating officer, but I wonder if now might be a good opportunity just to talk through these various, in each column, there is a vision point, right, that helps everybody to sit down and put this all kind of out and determine what the highest priorities in the city are. So Brooks, would you mind if I could ask you to kind of talk the council through this plan, because I know you and the street manager, Malia, spent a lot of time on this. And Malia, you're welcome to jump in as well at any time.
Sure, Mayor, Council. You'll see here from the street prioritization chart, kind of how we go through the process of prioritizing projects. If you look at the top one there, Flint Street, 3rd to 4th, the PCI is very low at 36. The base is actually adequate. It's not bad, so the street isn't necessarily failing from underneath. The classification is a residential, so there needs some minor stormwater work on it. ADA upgrades need to be done. The real driving force behind this project we're coordinating this with YDOT. YDOT is putting in a traffic signal at 3rd and Flint this summer. And so it was an opportunity for us to partner with them and get the street improvements done at the same time so that we're not having to close the street down twice. So our prioritization factors really, we talk a lot about PCI, but it's just a piece of it, right? I mean, the PCI tells us the story on top, what you can see. But we start getting into our soil zones and our base and what those look like, and that's where you see the streets. I call them roller coasters. They go up and down, and so when that base starts to fail, even though sometimes the PCI on top may not be terrible, if that base is failing, the street can become dangerous to drive on. And then we like to look at the classification. Obviously, our collector and arterials are normally going to be a higher priority than a residential street. And then we also have to look at coordinating with other projects: water projects, sewer projects, stormwater projects. You can see every street, every project we do requires ADA upgrades. One of the things we look at is with development. So if you see like the Venture Drive Adams to Wyotech project there that you all awarded the design on last week, we have a delayed improvement agreement with LCBA on that section. So anyway, that's kind of some of the processes we go through to look at where these fall. These external partnerships really are a big driving force. But I think one of the things I wanted to touch on was that, we always focus on PCI, but just remember PCI is just a piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, and a great example of that, Brooks, would be the second project in the second row here, 9th Street from Harney to Shields. Council, you'll see the PCI 61, but the base has failed, and this is a project we talked about for a few years that is probably a really great roller coaster example, to use Brooks Webb.
Yeah, and Council, you'll see next week at the City Council meeting, we're bringing 9th Street for bid award, get that project going.
These projects are the PCI information that you're including. That's from the most recently completed PCI. Of course, we've got a new one coming up. But these projects were informed around the most recently completed one the last time. Right?
That's correct.
All right. And I see hands going up galore, so I guess we are going to do hands. People like to do hands and be called on, so we'll do that. And if I go in order, it's going to be Councilor Somerville, Councilor Harrington, Councilor Schmeckel. Councilor Somerville.
Thank you, Mayor. So I just, Brooke, just maybe for public edification and a reminder for myself, can you talk about how our projects for streets that are not paved, so for example, Wyoming Avenue, end up in this list, how you work on prioritizing that with streets that are already paved and have a low PCI? So, because we've got Wyoming, and if I'm looking at the list, please correct me if I'm wrong, I think that's the only unpaved street that's on this list in particular. But could you talk about that process and how your department is incorporating all of those type of street projects in?
Sure. Yeah, Councilor Somerville, through you, Mayor. So with Wyoming Avenue, Wyoming Avenue is kind of the main collector over there. And so we did the section up by Linford School a couple years ago. The project that we have identified here is that extension down to the other end. Part of this project for Wyoming Avenue is the storm drainage. We've got to get all the storm drain system in before we can pave. And once we get that storm drain system in, that will allow us to start paving outwards away from Wyoming Avenue on other streets. Currently, there's no storm drain system, so we put a street in there and it's just going to flood. So the storm drain system is, we're hoping to get that, the storm drain phase of Wyoming Avenue done this construction season. And then the actual paving and sidewalk, curb and gutter and all that will be next summer. And then that will allow us to do some of the surrounding area and move out over there. But Wyoming Avenue is kind of the key for that whole area over there.
Mr. Mayor, follow up if I can.
Of course.
So thanks, Brooks. I appreciate that explanation. So this list currently goes through about FY26. Do we anticipate any of those additional adjacent streets to Wyoming once that project is completed coming up on this list for infrastructure improvement in the next couple of years, or you're not anticipating anything until at least FY27?
Yeah, Counselor, I think we have some identified in our plan out in 27. Your capital budget you're seeing out obviously just goes through 26 on the street stuff. But we've got in some of the out years, 27, 28, some of those identified. Wyoming Avenue and getting that storm drain in, we're hoping we'll be done with that in fiscal year 24, but it's a big project, so it may roll over into 25. So we didn't want to stack those up until we get Wyoming and the storm drain system done over there.
Thank you.
I have a question about that, Councilors Harrington and Schmeckel, if you'll allow me to tack on to that last line of questioning, and it's for the city manager and the public works director. Again, some of these things could be subject to change depending on what's identified in certain kinds of grant opportunities or funding opportunities that may exist as a result of the federal infrastructure package. And I think it's fair for us to just kind of keep that in mind around this kind of discussion. I mean, there may be some projects, for instance, in West Laramie or some other things that might fit a certain kind of criteria that might make them eligible for funding and might cause us to reevaluate the schedule. And Mr. Webb, I see nodding along with that, that's very much possible. I think the city manager as well. And we have someone that's researching and trying to identify those things too. So I don't know. It seemed like that would be worthwhile to point out too. The schedule is something we're going to try to follow. Obviously, that's why we budget for it and plan for it and do this. But if there are opportunities that are, I don't want to characterize them as too good to pass up, but where we'd be unwise to not capitalize on them and try to go after some of that funding to get some of these longer term projects done, well, then of course we'll do that. And that's, I think, also the kind of thing we need to have in our budget discussions as well, so people realize that that's the case if they don't already, that we're certainly keeping the antenna out for those kinds of things. Councilor Harrington, thank you for your patience. Go right ahead.
Sure, Mr. Mayor. Brooks, just so I'm really clear, it's on Wyoming Avenue as well, but just so I have sort of those benchmark streets, because there will be, I'm sure, questions from the public on it. And just to save you an email from me later, we're talking about this project would be paving sort of that unpaved section, so Johnson to Adams Street. Is that right? From the elementary school to the eastern end of Wyoming?
I believe that is correct.
Okay.
Yeah. As we go on, I'll double check, but I believe that is correct.
Cool. Thanks, Brooks. That's all, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to be sure I knew that while I had the chance.
Very good. Council, we also have
we've got
water line.
We've got one more question. No, I'm sorry, City Manager. We just got one more question. Like I said, I think people are more comfortable with the wait and be recognized part of it. So we're going to stick with that format. Councilor Schmeckel, thanks for waiting.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm curious what the soil zone, if you can give us a very brief overview on that, because I'm a little shocked to see that Ivinson from 9th to 15th is a 4, and it seems kind of like a bit of an outlier compared to the rest of it. And then I will have a question about West Laramie south of Snowy Range Boulevard and whether or not we have drainage there that is sufficient for projects there in the future, and if that's an area of concern and focus.
So is that for Public Works Director first? Okay. All right.
Councilors, I'm going to step back real quick and answer Council Harrington. It's Johnson to Pierce for the paving on Wyoming. The storm drain system actually kind of jogs up to some other streets, but the paving portion is Johnson to Pierce.
That's a long stretch of Wyoming.
Yeah, it's going to be a long project, a big project.
Yeah.
As far-
Thank you, Mr. Webb. Councilor Harrington, do you have anything you want to throw in now that you've got some of those details, or are you good?
No, Mr. Mayor, that's all I needed.
All right. Thank you for following up, Brooks, on that. And, okay. So do you want Councilor Schmeckel to go over that again?
Well, I can start on the soil zone question. Basically, as we look at these, obviously soil zone 1 is the worst area. And I may actually defer this a little to Eric Japp. He's got a lot of more background on this than I do, and was involved in the soil zone study. So, Eric, if you're there.
He's on my screen.
Yeah.
Oh, there he is.
Council. What exactly was the question again? I was listening, but just want to make sure I'm fully answering it.
I'm just looking for a little more information about soil zones, and I think 1 equals bad, 5 equals good might be a significant part of this equation.
Yeah. So actually, probably, and I can't remember the exact page, but the best resource for this is we actually have a pavement manual that was completed, and it's actually available to anybody on the engineering website under resources. If you just go to the city website, and in there it actually shows the classification. And when we did that, we actually went and classified different soil zones around the city, and did geotech and had other information as well, and basically classified the city into different soil zones. And then we have a road cross section that kind of helps determine that of what needs to be done with it. So it just kind of depends on the soil zone is actually just kind of letting you know what type of soil is in there, and then that helps you to kind of correlate that with a cross section of that pavement study to kind of help do that. But it kind of gives you an idea of the type of soil that we have in that area of what's going on there.
I'll add from my standpoint, when I look at the different soil zones with the roads, usually a number 1 means the project's going to be more expensive because it requires a bigger cross section or a different cross section, maybe some different fabrics that go in there to help stabilize the roadway.
Councilor Schmeckel, I want to get in on this soil zone action because it's the first time I remember a question about it. It's actually pretty interesting, and it's a pretty big factor. I think it's fair to say in the street conditions, because some of these have had to have repeat treatments and attention. I think it's fair to say, and I'm a little curious. This might be a question for Eric, although he's not a geologist. It's a lot of 1s and 2s here, which seems to communicate to me that the soil is pretty hard on our roadways here in Laramie, just based on, I guess, the natural geology. And I'm just kind of curious what's going on with that. I've always known that the soil up in the part of Ward 2, for instance, on the south end by the gypsum kind of fields, if you want to call them that, has presented problems both for streets and construction. But it looks like it's pretty spread pretty well all over. And it seems like the nature of the soil in the area is just kind of rough to deal with from a city infrastructure perspective. I don't know. Is there anything you'd like to add to that? It's kind of a meandering question, I guess, city engineer, but I'm just curious. Is there something going on with the geology here that's just created this situation, or is this just a particularly bad list that's highlighting some rough soil patches throughout town?
Your Honorable Mayor, kind of as Brooks noted, yeah, the soil 1 is noting where we do have worse soil, so we can start to see failures of road in that area more common. However, that soil 1, a lot of times it gets people think of it just kind of south of Spring Creek, but there's pockets of it. It actually kind of is in quite a bit of Laramie and stuff. It kind of travels kind of to the or west of the university, and then kind of loops back up in there where that soil 1 is kind of classified. So we actually have pockets of it and areas of it, not just, in certain areas of town, but a large chunk of town actually encompasses that soil 1 where we're seeing, or that zone 1 where we're seeing kind of bad conditions.
I really appreciate you making an effort to add some more information to that. I wasn't aware that type of soil quality was so widespread. I had traditionally, like you mentioned, just thought of the stuff south of Spring Creek. I think we're familiar with that stuff being pretty.
Yeah, and as I noted, if you go actually to our website under engineering resources, actually at the bottom is where you can actually see a map of the entire city, and it will show you where all those zones are, and you guys can view that as well, and you can actually see kind of where those different sections are, and it gives you a good representation of kind of what we're looking at.
Well, I really appreciate that. I appreciate both of you for jumping on that question, and Councilor Schmeckel, I appreciate you bringing this up because I don't recall recently a lot of discussion about this, but it's back to you. You've got the floor for your second question. Sorry about the jumping on the bandwagon here, but that was interesting to me.
No worries. It's always good to talk dirt with you. So just curious about drainage there south of Snowy Range Road there. Knowing that we've completed the project north on Wyoming, is this something that we need to look at for Harrison before we can pave that road as well, or are we kind of set down there where we can start looking at some projects?
Yeah, Councilor Schmeckel, Mayor, I think any of those roads that are basically gravel roads don't have storm drain systems in them. And so before we can go in and really do the full paving, curb, gutter, sidewalk, storm drain system's got to be put in, or the road's gonna flood, right? And the water's got to go somewhere. So yeah, any of those gravel roads, there's going to have to be upgrades to the storm drain system.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. Thank you.
City Manager, I have some more hands piling up here, I think, on this topic. So let's go ahead and get the questions out of the way, and then we'll come back to you. Councilmember Gabriel.
Thanks, Mayor. I was wondering, Brooks, I see the Ivinson 9th to 15th projected FY 26 with the parking structure expected to be completed January of next year. It looks like that would be a couple of years before 9th Street would have any reconstruction. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And one of the reasons that Ivinson 9th to 15th is where it is because the C-line sewer outfall. We're currently working on the second phase of that, which gets us to Ivinson. And then the third phase, which will begin in fiscal year 26, will actually go down Ivinson. So that fiscal year 26 on Ivinson is coordinated with the third phase of the C-line sewer project.
I was just curious whether or not something could be done in the interim. That's a couple of years, and that street is falling apart, as everybody knows. Would there be any kind of possibility to do some kind of temporary pavement on that stretch?
I think the issue is anything we put down is going to get torn up. I mean, so, we had been thinking about Ivinson for a long time, and I know there's been conversations years ago about Ivinson, and the city manager may be able to talk about that more, but basically anything we do on Ivinson now is what I would call sacrificial and is going to get torn out because that sewer line has to go through there. And we can't move the sewer line up because we got to get the second phase in down 6th Street from Canby to Ivinson before we can move on.
Yeah, I'll add to that. we did become aware recently that the university might have some concern with the street surfaces around that parking garage that's going up. But we had spoken, well, we did conceptual planning for Ivinson now probably 5.5 years ago with a team from UW on our planning team. And then presented that plan probably 3 years ago to the president's office and trustees. But at that time, Councilor Gabriel, they had not started to talk about a parking structure at Ivinson, where the old hospital was. But in any case, say 3.5 years ago, I'd say we did present the plan for reconstruction of Ivinson, hoping that maybe we could form a financial partnership because we had envisioned some pretty cool treatments on the top of the street that would sort of honor the university's presence there, create a real well-lit, active pathway for cars and pedestrians to move between campus and downtown, and also a cycle track that would hopefully eventually go around the campus. And at that time, the university just wasn't ready to partner with us on that. We could have maybe expedited our project at that point in time, but we did not because they didn't seem to have any interest. But to be fair, they also hadn't started, at least publicly, discussing a parking garage at that location. So that parking garage project came down pretty quickly and certainly got ahead of the DEQ requirements where we need to lay infrastructure sequentially, particularly underground for sanitary sewer. Brooks and I have talked a little bit, and literally earlier this week mentioned to the president in the meeting that he and the vice mayor and I had that, you know, if we want to put a temporary surface there, the university could certainly do that, but it would be sacrificial. That's the phrase that we usually use in this circumstance, like a sacrificial asphalt or concrete overlay that we will have to go in and dig up in fiscal 26.
Thank you.
Okay, appreciate that that answer. Councilmember O'Doherty, you had a hand up a little earlier. Would you like to ask a question or?
I changed my mind. Thanks.
Changed your mind. Okay, Councilmember Somerville.
Thank you. Just a follow up to Councilor Gabriel's question. If the university were to go ahead and lay that street down, knowing we would tear it up, would that increase our costs substantially at all if we have to tear up their relatively new street surface to do the project later?
Through you, Mayor, Councilor Somerville, I might ask Brooks to come back in on this because I know this has been a relatively recent topic with the project team and our public works team, but it could drive up our costs. You know, they're going to be running a lot of buses up to this parking garage from what I understand. And those buses typically are not very kind to an asphalt surface. They create that pushing in the asphalt and that bubbling up, and I'm sure the engineers have a much cooler term for it than I do. Anyway, so cement is maybe a better surface treatment for a road that's going to have that kind of bus traffic, and frankly just car traffic too, I guess, going in and out of that parking garage. It could drive our cost up, say, if they want to put back concrete, where we've been budgeting for asphalt streets, and typically concrete costs more. So I think that's part of the conversation with the university, Councilor Somerville, is if they want to put a sacrificial surface down until we go in and dig it up, you know, who pays what share, basically? And will asphalt be enough, or is concrete the better long-term solution? Brooks, is there anything newer that's come to your attention other than what I just said? Because it's been a couple weeks since we spoke about this.
Nope, I think you nailed it.
So, Andy, I think the answer is maybe, but I think that's part of what we'd like to talk to UW about is not, hopefully not driving up our costs significantly, unless it seems that the concrete is warranted. And as the Public Works Director said to me 2 weeks ago, the way prices are going right now, maybe by 26, concrete will be cheaper than asphalt for maybe the first time ever. Who knows, right?
I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right. I don't see any other hands. So, City Manager.
Sorry, as I'm talking here and on mute. Let's go to the next page, Clerk, and we can look at these projects on the ground in a geographical layout. So, Council, we started a few years ago in the Public Works Department and Engineering and GIS. They've been putting together this cool interactive map for our website. You don't have the interactive map in front of you, but if you go on the city's website, this similar map is there, and you can click over and hover over these projects and get more information about them, and we'll have that up all summer kind of in real time. What I like about the fact that this is now being included in the budget book is, you can really see the amount of work that's going on in our community. This is 2 summers worth of work, and look at how much of the community is being touched and impacted. And I know a lot of times folks feel very negatively impacted by public improvement projects because of the inconvenience. But I think the fact of the matter is that this kind of investment, it's actually very exciting. It means we have a growing and thriving community. And I know it makes driving around in the summer kind of annoying, but overall, this is a sign of good things for a community, I think. One, that we even have the resources to make this amount of investment in keeping up our infrastructure and laying new infrastructure. If you look to the north point on that map, and you can kind of see the landfill up there in orange with the little yellow circles in it, that's our solid waste section. If you go south of there and you see the green and the blue line stretching east-west along there, this is our new north side water tank and water transmission line, and then also the sanitary sewer line that will go in as well. And as you know, Council, that's to ready that north side of the town to begin to be developed. And so we're doing that purely to facilitate growth and demand for growth.
And this is over two years. This isn't all one summer. I mean, it's a lot. Even half of it is a lot for one construction season, I guess we should say, but this is for 2.
Correct. If you scroll up a little bit, Nancy, there is a little bit more information at the bottom of this page about the ARPA funds. As you know, last fall, I think it was, the City Council did put $4 million of ARP funding forward, and that's 71% of what we think that we will receive, and that went to water and wastewater projects. That was a very good investment, aggressive, I would say, in terms of dollars, aggressment into our water and wastewater funds, and certainly helped to balance out the potential need for water increases. For rate increases in water and wastewater. We had very meager increases, and this allows us to keep up that investment to continue expanding infrastructure so we can grow. So a reminder that occurred. We also think we'll be submitting applications for other funding that is going to be passed through the state. And I know you all watched the legislative session closely. They did pass $334 million of ARPA appropriation in the state budget. But as of yet, the state agencies who will administer these projects are saying, we're unlikely to see rules promulgated surrounding how to apply and what the funds can be used for until probably late summer, early fall at the earliest, I think. And Jennifer, if you had anything newer that you were aware of in that realm, you're welcome to weigh in. But the last I knew, we were all thinking late summer, early spring.
Latest I've heard is October.
Vice Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to jump in here and for council, but mostly for the public's edification. Not only is the city of Laramie going to be, engaged in infrastructure projects, so is the University of Wyoming, as well as WYDOT, the state of Wyoming, on our 3rd Street and Grand Avenue, because they're highways. So the city manager's office and public works department have been working really, really hard with our other partners to kind of put together a map and some sort of communication and notification. And that was part of the discussion that city manager and I had with the University of Wyoming and had with WYDOT and the University of Wyoming months ago, is to have these things coordinated so that members of our community can just kind of do a quick review of everything that's going on in town. So, and that will be coming shortly or soon, and we're hoping to be in good cooperation. And Janine, if you want to jump in here and kind of polish that a little bit, that'd be great. But we want to definitely be at the forefront of communicating all the projects, not just city projects. And when the community sees how busy we're going to be, it's not going to be just next summer or this coming up summer. It's going to be for many years, many summers, because our seasons are short, and we basically have to move fast in that construction season. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Vice Mayor. We're also trying to coordinate with WYDOT and UW to minimize road closures corresponding to these various projects, because as you look at this map, and remember, this is just city stuff. If we layer the WYDOT stuff on here, and if we layered on the university stuff and potential road closures, either partial or full closures, it's significant impact to the community, and frankly, as a city manager, significant impact to our public safety services and their ability to move around town and deliver service. So we had a good, productive meeting with WYDOT and UW in the fall, and then again just recently following up this week, and they're trying to work with us so that when they come for road closure requests, they understand that we're really trying to minimize those, because the cumulative effect of all of this is significant and really has to be managed on a holistic citywide way. If you go to the next page, Clerk, we can talk a little bit about the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. Again, just a little more detail here about that. We do anticipate more money, potentially billions more dollars coming in pass-through funds to the state of Wyoming. Some may be a direct appropriation from the federal government as well. As we talked about, we think those funds in maybe fiscal years 22 through 26, so this biennium and then the subsequent biennium, but we're still waiting for a lot more information. What that could do, though, because those infrastructure investment funds are specific to highways, to water infrastructure, et cetera, it really could bring more money in to help us even accomplish more work in these next 2 bienniums or 4 years than we are currently showing you on these maps and such. I wanted to point out one other thing. There is money in that Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, and really almost a mandate, if you will, that cities, any operator of a municipal or any operator of a water system, municipal or otherwise, does need to engage in some lead and copper pipe inventorying and potentially remediation. That's new, and that's something that our public works folks are researching very carefully and we're planning for. But that could be really funding. There could be new funding there that we're going to have to put toward a new cause and not our traditional uses like streets and water, et cetera. So keep that in mind for those upcoming dollars. And then the rest of this page just really goes into more detail, Council, about the carbon emissions reduction initiative elements of the capital investment program. And I know that that's something you're all interested in. I won't cover this in detail, but there is a lot of information here looking at our fleet acquisitions and where we've purchased modified or hybrid technologies. Also, how we've done that for large equipment and what we've done looking at city facilities specifically to try to attain your carbon emission reductions goals. Okay, next page, unless you all have any questions on that. I don't want to read to you. I know you guys can too. If we go to, let's see, which page am I on here? Scroll up a little bit on that page, Nancy. Just so I can see the page number, because I got out of sequence. Oh, here we go. We are almost The study that we've been completing in stormwater, as you know, we've been talking about this for 2 and 3 years, Counselor. It's really kind of a starting point for being able to bite off our stormwater system needs in sort of reasonably sized projects. So there's a lot more information here about this. I guess other than me talking about it, I wanted to offer if the city engineer or if public works director had anything they want to add to this section as far as how we're planning for this biennium and how the completion of the study will affect that. And if any of you have questions, please jump in, because again, I know we have more senior members, we have newer members, and the more senior ones will know we've been talking about this storm drainage study for years. Others may want a little bit more full description. Okay, I don't see any questions. So we did highlight in the next page a couple major projects that we're going to be working on, major groups of projects, and actually it's, well, it starts at the bottom of this page here, and we're talking about Bill Nye expansion. Bill Nye will be able to go under construction, or at least start engineering, I think, probably in the second year of this biennium. And Brooks, if you or anyone else has newer information from WYDOT and need to correct me, please do. But this would allow us to construct Bill Nye really from its current end point at Boulder Drive on the east side of town near Laramie High School, and stretch that roadway across what is now sort of vacant Turner Track properties to the west, with the intention to connect first to 19th Street, but ultimately to 3rd Street. So Bill Nye will become really an east-west, I think it's a major arterial that will be parallel to Grand Avenue, and really be important to opening up the Turner Tract for full and final development over coming decades. This project is financially, frankly, very burdensome. We're performing this project in partnership with the Wyoming Department of Transportation. This is the Urban Systems project, which has some federal funds coming to it. In fact, the lion's share coming from federal funding through USAC. But the city's match requirement is significant, and candidly is something that, as we put this budget together, we really struggled with meeting the need for this. We know Bill Nye is really important to the future of the community, and so we've worked very hard to appropriate the funds we need for the street itself. But council, keep in mind as we build this new street through kind of virgin land on that south vacant Turner Track property, we also have to be thinking about the underground infrastructure that should rightfully be laid in parallel with it: water, sewer, storm sewers, and then also the beautification elements that we would like to have and that our comprehensive plan requires for roadways of this classification. In order to make the meet the financial demand for the road, we have trimmed out beautification elements with the hope that if we get the road in, that in coming years we will be able to identify additional funding to complete the beautification elements in the median, and I think some sidewalk and pedestrian elements on the north side. So I need to be transparent with you all in that this will not be the perfect road unless we find a lot more money in the next 3 years. If you have desire to hear more detail about that, I certainly can let Todd address what amenities we took out on the surface for pedestrian and other beautification elements. But just know that we don't intend to give up on them. We just cannot afford it in this budget, and we need to be looking for more funding, maybe from some of those federal allocations. And I have a lot of hands on that one. I thought he would.
So we'll go with Councilor Schuster.
Thank you very much. Been on the UNSAC quite a few terms now, and one of the things she said that might confuse people is we were going to connect to 19th. Bill Nye is done from 15th to 19th through the residential, and someone a long time ago knew that Bill Nye was going to be a major collector. So if you go down Bill Nye 15th to 19th, it's a very wide street. It is made to accept what we're going to do. Now, I'm afraid when we connect it, we might have some angry people out there because the traffic is going to increase something phenomenal. But it has been looked at. It's being very well planned. I hope that we can do the beautification at the same time. But just to get Bill Nye connected to 15th will be such a helpful thing out there. So thank you.
You bet. Councilmember Somerville.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess two questions here. One is, what is the total amount, if I'm just not remembering it from the text, of the beautification elements that were cut out? And I was wondering if the assistant city manager could describe what those were.
Honorable Mayor, City Council. So the first thing of the beautification that was cut out was the formalization of the islands down the middle. I've actually proposed a couple times that we do it like Nation Way in Cheyenne, where the islands are native, don't have curb and gutter and act as part of the detention. And I think that's been forwarded and they're working on that. And then the pathway will more than likely not be constructed and need to be constructed in phases. The bicycle pathway that would be considered on the north side. Brooks, do I have that right on those two items? Or Eric?
Yeah, that's correct. The good news with the pathway is YDOT will have a final design for it. So, and they're willing to basically give us that design. So when we're ready to do that pathway in the future, the design will be completed. And then two other things that were coming out of it was some of the landscaping and then some final chip seal, so those four items, basically landscaping, center medians, pathway, and chip seal.
Yeah, correct. And if I remember, the landscaping part that's coming out is we'll still have sleeves for irrigation, but we won't have any trees or any plantings in that area that we can work on other projects similar as we've done with the remaining islands on Bill Nye. But there is significant cost savings in removing those items and then trying to tackle them in the future, whether it's through TAP grant allocations with matches, through SPTs or other avenues to try to get that done.
Thank you, Mayor. Quick follow-up. The timing of maybe pairing it with a TAP grant submission in the next year or two, depending on construction, does that seem likely? And second, what was the amount of the beautification, or for all of those items that was taken out?
Councilor Somerville, I don't know the exact amount for the pieces taken out. I can tell you the amount we budgeted toward this project is $4.2 million, and that's our very small amount compared to the USAC investment. Perhaps someone else knows the total cost of those other elements. I would guess it was at least another 25%.
I'm looking for it now. I have it somewhere, but is what I will say that we're currently working with YDOT. They're redoing the numbers right now, simply because of the way the costs are, like Janine talked about earlier. So YDOT is currently in the middle of redoing those costs. Councilor Somerville, if I can find that number for you, I'll let you know as we go along here. I know I have it somewhere in my files.
Yeah.
Brooks, thanks, and I'm happy to follow up with that offline too. Thanks.
Yeah. And Councilor Somerville, as far as tying that up with the TAP grant, it's really going to be imperative that the roadway's in place and we can show need. And as we show need, then we get a little bit better favoritism or scoring points with the TAP grant is going to be important. But keep in mind, right now, the match on TAP grants, I think, is 2080, but typically it's 50%, which is still a significant sum of money. Because if I remember correctly, we were a little bit north of $3 million on landscaping and pathway.
Thanks.
Councilmember Harrington.
Thanks, Mayor. I was curious. I think because so much of this road is meant to alleviate some of the traffic from those sort of peak times from the high school, as well as that neighborhood, and sort of the expansion through the Turner Tract. As we're talking about reducing things, I think generally I think this is a pretty smart idea to get us moving on a project that really is a linchpin for so much of that neighborhood development. And so, I think largely I'm okay with that. I'm a little wary of cutting the pathway, only because I'm worried that if I think tying a few of the pieces together as we talk about like reducing carbon emissions, as a piece of that, we should be incentivizing other modes of transportation. And I think, maybe this just isn't the road for it or the street for it, but given that it's meant to connect folks through their neighborhoods and certainly to the high school, I would want to make sure that pedestrian access is still a priority on this street so that we don't lose that or provide, sort of unsafe situations for pedestrians over, a 4-lane road with a median in the middle. And so I think keeping that in mind as we cut things, I'm sure you all have, but that would be important to me as we cut things. Otherwise, I think putting the landscaping and any of that stuff out into the future is just fine with me. The other question I had, Mr. Mayor, that wasn't a question, but the question I have, and I know the city owns a large portion of the land surrounding this, but not all of it. If we're not including curb and gutter and somebody develops those sections that they may own privately, would that be sort of the triggering moment for us to build out that infrastructure, or would we be trying to move that on the developer? Anybody want to give me some idea of how that may play out?
Brian, this is Malia. Councilor Harrington, I just wanted to say that this project has been very difficult to try to even get money for and keep matching because YDOT keeps increasing our and everything now is really our cost. USAC dollars are being used. And so this year, if you go to the Council Construction Fund 23, 24, 25, we were scheduling 300,000 additional in each year. Now we're scheduling 700,000 just to make the total of 4.2. And now, in addition to that, they're telling us that it's going to go higher again. Like it might be another $1 million, $2 million with the costs going up. So it's not that we don't want the path. Like we think we want all this, but we have to get the basics in. And we took the water and wastewater out of their project and made it into the enterprise funds because it had additional overhead costs with YDOT. So we're managing those projects to also keep the costs down. So we have just kept strategizing with this project to just keep it aboard and continue with the project. And so it wasn't that we wanted to cut any of it. And I do think, our strategy is to have the path. I mean, if we can get the road and everything in, I think there might be monies and it's already designed. So that could be something with the infrastructure bill or something that we might be able to do right away because the design will be done by YDOT. So that's a good thing. But I just wanted to tell everyone, this is not an easy project. I get with engineering and I go, hey, YDOT's telling us it's going up again. And we're like, oh my gosh, how are we gonna balance this and fund this? Because it's a lot of money for a street. We think it's important. And we've probably met on it several times, dozens of times. Every time something changes, we're reacting to it and making sure we have the funding to continue with this project. So I just wanted to tell everyone that this has not been a simple project to continue with.
If I could add,
yeah, go ahead.
Just on the pathway sidewalk portion, at today's cost estimates, it's $1.1 million just for that concrete to go down. And so, if you look at in your budget book in the description, basically the project is scheduled to be completed in fiscal year 26, and we are going to plan on doing what we can to schedule that pathway sidewalk in fiscal year 27. So just following right up behind it.
Yeah, Council, we have, for this project, as Brooks said, kind of starting in 24, At this point, we have just a little more than $5 million of general tax revenue planned after cutting out those pieces, and that doesn't include the sewer and the water line work that you'll see in the enterprise fund. So the community's investment in this is huge, although still a relatively small amount of the total cost. So we're really fortunate that USAC is paying for a portion of this street. But just giving a nod to what Malia said, I think it's entirely likely that when we're here next year talking about a supplemental budget in year 2 of the biennium, that we're probably going to be scrambling to address inflationary factors and increases in cost. To the things we removed, I agree with what Councilor Harrington said. The sidewalk was the most painful for me. But as Brooks said, we at a staff level, I think we agree with what you guys see as well, which is the sidewalk is really important. And so we're going to scramble every way we can to get that in as soon as possible.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I guess maybe the more appropriate way for me to ask that question, I certainly didn't mean to imply that these were easy choices. I guess maybe my comment would be better given as when we are considering what are the follow-on projects. For me, that pathway would prioritize higher than the landscaping. I think maybe that's the more appropriate way. And then just as maybe a follow-up to an earlier question, if there is other development in the short term, I mean, I know Brooks, you just mentioned it's a year different, but I was curious who's paying for those in the meantime. If a developer wanted to submit a plat for a subdivision on land they own that's along Bill Nye that we did not build the sidewalk on, would they be responsible for that portion of that road construction?
I think currently, right now, the way it works is development would be if they're developing right along the roadway, they are responsible for installing the sidewalks and curb and gutter.
Honorable Mayor, if I could add to that, we could certainly put that on the cost of development, but again, that runs the risk of running costs of projects up, increase in land values, higher home values. So in our efforts with the major arterial, it's important that the city works as hard as they can to do that infrastructure, because everything adds to the current battle we're fighting, which is the cost of homes.
One of the battles, certainly. Big one. Thanks, Councilor Harrington, for comments and clarification. Sorry, City Manager, go ahead.
No, that's okay. I was just going to say, so that's sort of a sneak peek on Bill Nye. We will, as Malia said, we've had dozens of meetings, and I expect dozens more, as not just the city, but YDOT also struggles with the cost and the planning. And I mean, this is a really big project. So we'll keep you up to date on it, but just wanted to be transparent about the amount of money being recommended in the budget and what it includes and what it did not include. If we're ready to go to the next page, what we were doing here is just highlighting like a group of our major projects. And so Bill Nye is major. The next sort of project group that I've already given a nod to is the North Laramie development. You'll know that in our comprehensive plan from 2006, 7, 8, somewhere in there, we'd identified then that topography and just the distance from the edge of the community northward was a problem that, as Todd said, that private development probably wasn't going to be able to solve. And so we had started a number of years ago and secured funds to put in a water tank at the sort of westernmost point of that blue line there, actually further west than that, and then to lay the transmission infrastructure that would bring water, basic transmission service, not service lines and those kinds of things, but up to this area of town where we've had conversation over the years with developers that want to develop there, and they seem ready to go forward, but they just don't have infrastructure to serve the area. So we're going to get underway on both the blue line, the water line, and the green sanitary sewer line. That's a pretty exciting project for the city. It's a huge project, much like Bill Nye, maybe even bigger, I don't know. And so that is something that's been in planning for many years, and we'll start actually breaking ground this summer. Brooks, did you want to add anything more current updates that you might have on this group of projects?
I think you got it. The North Tank project bid opening is next week. So, yeah, council should be seeing that bid award within the next month, I would imagine.
Okay, very good. Yeah, exciting stuff. This will not completely alleviate all costs of development that private developers might bear, but this is huge. In total, I think these two projects are, what, 21 million, if I remember right? 24.2, it's right there in the text. 24.2 million. Okay, if you don't have any questions there, those are kind of old and tried and true. The next group of projects is just our general West Laramie paving storm sewer group on the next page. And we touched on this a titch already, obviously, through the questions from Councilor Somerville, some of our other Ward 1 folks. We continue doing everything we can to get that stormwater backbone into West Laramie that allows us to put streets down and pavement down without them kind of floating away in the groundwater. And so we've talked already about Wyoming Avenue. I won't spend much time here other than to say we do anticipate possible additional federal and or pass-through state funding, and where projects in that ward would be a match for those grant funds, we will take that under consideration. And then our last, well, not the last, but the last on this page, group of projects is our sea line and sanitary sewer upgrades. Brooks has already touched on this just a little bit, but if you have any questions on this grouping of projects, you could certainly ask them now. And Brooks, where you want to give a quick status report on where we're at with this?
The second phase of sea line is currently in design. So it's down 6th Street from Canby to Ivinson. And that's construction is next summer.
Great. The 3 phases of the sea line project are going to be $5.2 million in total, Council. And then, as you know, on the next page, we also have our grouping of projects along 3rd Street that will all lead up to our underground work leading up to surface work by Wyoming Department of Transportation, because 3rd Street is their street, right? We did mention that the traffic signal that they are planning to put in at Flint, I believe, is the cross street. That will come sooner, but the underground work that we do that frees them up to do surface work will proceed, I think now we're saying in 27. So we have a lot to get done between now and YDOT needing to be on the surface of that street. And we'll begin that this summer.
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow, literally tomorrow. That's
we literally begin that project tomorrow.
That's really exciting. That's really good news. Parks improvements, we did group at the top of this page. As you know, we're always trying to do what work we can do in parks. If you have any questions, we're happy to entertain them. The bulk of this park work being done through specific purpose tax at $6.8 million. And then at the next part of the page, our Municipal Operations Center has also been a huge grouping of projects, including vertical construction, to rehabilitate the old Wyotech facilities there, to demo and rebuild a few of them, and to bring infrastructure and water and sewer service up to this campus, which did not have municipal services, but will here be fully served by the city services within a few years. And Brooks, any updates you want to give there, like a substantial completion date or anything exciting? I know you just can't wait to get this one off your plate.
Yeah, I can't. But actually, it's coming along real nice. They're getting to the point now where we're starting to see final finishes, and so it's pretty exciting. We got pushed a little bit back on our substantial completion due to basically the material issue that we've all been talking about. You know, delays in materials. So we're at this point we're anticipating to be able to move in around mid-June.
Council, when we get that building ready, perhaps your first coming back together in person, not to insist, but just to suggest, might be to come check out this new, really state-of-the-art facility for our public works folks who have literally been for 70 years working in the same building since like the 1940s. So it's, yeah, in a very antiquated and not ideal working environment. So we're real excited to get this open and can't wait to get you out there to see it.
I have a question for the city manager. Are we supposed to bring our pickup trucks to help with the move?
I don't know. Now that's a great idea. You know, it takes, what do they used to call it, a barn raising? Maybe we can kind of have a group moving operation, because the logistics of that are, wow, that's almost as big as the vertical construction piece. I haven't been out there yet, but I'll tell you, the few staff people I've talked to that have just say it's just amazing. And I think y'all are going to be super impressed by the meeting room. That was something that the council, when we started talking about creating this North Campus for city facilities, had said, you know, geez, it'd be great to have a public meeting space. And I hear from everyone that's been there that it's really pretty cool. So. Next page, total cost on this project. Again, this is about an 8-9 year process to get to this point, but it's $21.5 million. And that'll be the first significant investment that this city's made in in any kind of city facilities, probably since the rec center was built and Fire Station 3. Speaking of fire, our fire training facility renovation, which is a specific purpose tax project, is nearing completion. Also a little behind schedule because of delay in receiving certain materials and needed things. But it's getting really close. You can see there's a picture there of it in progress, and that's another project that we're excited to wrap up. And I know the fire chief can't wait to get you guys out there and show you what that looks like. I'll add that we did try to take very seriously that this facility is on a city gateway, and so we're trying to take a fire training facility and make it like actually cool and welcoming as people come into our community. So public art displays been commissioned through our Public Art Coalition, and hoping to put that up this summer, maybe midsummer, to give a nod to the fact that this facility is in our gateway entrance zoning. And then our last big group of projects is our software and efficiency improvements. And you guys have heard a whole bunch about our enterprise resource planning software project replacement. That's sort of fully underway now, and Chief Operating Officer Brown and Jennifer Wade and really so many members of our staff are on hand working on this every single day now. So we've also put together a team of leaders throughout our organization that we hope will help us. They're called change agents, to help all of us remember to embrace change as we see everything changing when we log in for work every day. Malia, you want to give us any more current updates?
Just here to answer questions, but basically we started our financials, and the first modules are the general ledger, chart of accounts, budgeting, project and capital reporting, and we actually started that today. So we're on our way, and it's scheduled, all these modules are scheduled to, in the financials, to go live October of 23.
Which sounds like a long way away, but when sort of doing a heart transplant on your organization in terms of software, it's not very long at all.
Yeah, and that's just the first financials. Then you go into payroll and human resources, and we have the community starting in January of 23. Yeah. So next year they'll start. So there's going to be overlapping training going on in a year from now.
Any questions on ERP, Council? I think, you know what, the first year or so, those changes probably won't be terribly visible to the public, but once we get that sort of heart transplant done, then we can start building on that with some of the external customer-facing elements of the software. So in a few years, I think our public will start to see some of the results of that investment as well.
I think that we've been pretty regularly updated on the progress of that huge project, and feel like we'll continue to be updated on the progress of that project as it moves along.
Absolutely. Okay, we're ready to go look at some of the fund-specific details. Most of what we're going to cover we have already touched on in these overview materials and in the grouping of the projects into kind of these large categories that we've just now covered. But I did feel like it was important, Council, that we give you a chance to actually look at the fund portions of the capital budget. So we're moving now to page 43, and we'll look at general fund. And the way we break this down, just to differentiate this is getting into sort of, you know, the gory detail of budget and away from text-heavy narratives. And so, for instance, if you look here, that top row, city administration, this is a particular division of the city, or including IT, city manager's office, various other offices. So we'll break it down by division. You can see there's city administration, then there's fire, then there's parks and recreation. And under each of those blue categories, you'll see the total recommended expenditure for vehicles, for instance, for equipment in each of those various categories. In total, I told you earlier, we are making a significant investment in fleet vehicle and equipment asset replacement. And so this is where you find the detail of that. If you can look toward fire, that second blue row, you'll see under equipment, we do have $1.124 million recommended there, and that is for replacement of emergency apparatus. So don't think these are all just sort of work trucks. These are important things like fire trucks and emergency equipment. If we go to the next page, then you can see Parks and Recreation. And again, I'm not going to go into great detail here, but please interrupt me as you'd like with any questions. At the top of the next page, you'll see the remainder of that chart, which shows vehicles in in police. And the majority of police fleet is vehicles, literally patrol cars, recommending $1.3 million in replacement of those vehicles. In Public Works, also a lot of heavy equipment, almost $9 million being recommended for equipment replacement and $92,000 for vehicles, and that is literally a couple work trucks. In total, in the general fund, you've got $10,666,905 being recommended for fleet and equipment replacement. And if you want to know the detail of each of those pieces of fleet and equipment, you can scroll down this page. And you'll see in the bottom chart by department and the division in the department, we track our fleet and equipment by unit number, and then you'll see a description. So for instance, the top row is in the fire department in the operations division. We'll be replacing unit 42, assuming you approve this budget, replacing a pickup with 136,375 miles on it. It was purchased in 2009. We project that will cost $60,857 with some add-on costs of $10,000 and anticipate a trade-in of $4,000. So your total reflected cost there is $66,857. And then we show in that final column what year we'll replace it, whether it's in the first year, 2022 of the biennium, or in the second year, 2023. So that's where you can find all the detail about those fleet replacements in the general fund. And we're ready to go to the next page, Nancy, page 45. Just continuing on, that top chart is the remainder of the vehicle replacements, and then you'll see the second chart at the bottom half of the page shows equipment replacements. So for instance, I talked about fire apparatus. If you scroll about halfway down that second chart, you'll see in fire EMS, we are replacing medical unit 145, or hoping to, that is an ambulance. And then also looking for $1.25 million, hoping to replace a Class A pumper. That's a piece of fire extinguishing equipment. And in the second year of the biennium, as you work down, we also have another ambulance that needs replaced. We're really at the point where we replace an ambulance just about every year in the fire service. Next page, Nance. And then here's the rest of your equipment replacements. And know that these do range from very small pieces of equipment like ATVs used at the ranch and for mosquito control in parks, all the way on up to those Class A fire pumpers that we just talked about. Okay, so then next page, here's your projects. This is more construction, vertical largely, sometimes underground infrastructure as well. We've talked about a lot of these projects already, notably like at the top under administrative services, that ERP, planning and business process software replacement. There are a number of other smaller projects there, including Tyler case management software that will be in the municipal court. That project is underway, but should be completed here pretty quick. We have some facility needs at Fire Station 1 with the apparatus ramp needing to be replaced. That's about a $45,000 recommended expenditure. And then you'll see at the training center that I just mentioned to you, we do need some props, as the fire department call them, but they're training equipment that would be inventory in that training center, recommending $55,000 there. The detail of these projects is on the following pages of your budget book, but I do not intend to go over the detail pages, but just know that they're there. In the city manager's office, Todd Fieser, as you know, has been working on the notion of a parklet, and we have noted here some additional funding in 24 for, oh, excuse me, that's out in the next biennium. But we are planning, as you can see, some funding every other year to allow for parklets in the downtown. Todd, I think you've identified that vacant space as the future parklet.
Janine, that's correct. My plan is to move Hollyhock Commons out of the parking area into that vacant space between Laramie Vision Clinic and the spa place as a parklet. This particular item is about the development of parklets that do land in the street, similar to the one that landed next to Jeffrey's Bistro. And we're looking forward to seeing what we can develop in 2024, I believe, for the next parklet project.
Very good. Thanks, Todd. And I think, Counselor, you're going to be able to talk about this on your next agenda, actually, that little parklet downtown. I did want to point out two other things in the city manager's office under that third blue shaded row. We have appropriate funds here for the comprehensive plan update. This is money that has been in the budget but was taken out because we knew that we needed to do some other things first. It does appear that we can maybe, once we complete the extraterritorial growth management plan and that $150,000 recommended expenditure there, that we'll be ready to move on to the comp plan either at the end of this biennium, potentially in the early part of the next biennium. But this is where we budgeted for some of your city and county committee objectives to get accomplished. The rest of these projects are pretty straightforward, Council. Really routine replacement of building elements. And if you have a question about any of these projects, I'm happy to answer them. If not, we can go to the next page. We talked earlier, now we're under Public Works, just rounding out the projects. We talked earlier about our citywide storm drainage study. You can see we've made a significant investment and are coming to the end of that project and recommending the rebudget of only $68,000, which is great. We do still have the $300,000 in the budget for the University of Wyoming traffic study. This is money that we may need relative to the construction on the campus to maybe study traffic flows around the campus, how best to route those flows based on the changes in the siting of University of Wyoming buildings. Carrying that for a period of time and are recommending that to be continued forward because we are uncertain what needs we might have in that area. Under Public Works, you'll also notice, and if you have questions, Brooks can certainly answer them, we are looking at some storm sewer relining and carrying a budget for what we call street oversizing. And this is when developers come in and we require them to oversize the street, and we will do so at our own cost. We don't always know what oversizing requests we might get in any given year. So we budget for this based on kind of an average or any known projects that might be coming forward in future years. But that's important so that we have that money there and we can kind of move at the speed of development to get the street done and not have to come back to council for budget amendments and those sort of things. And then lastly, we've been promising you a PCI evaluation, and that is budgeted in this budget, well, actually being rebudgeted because it was not completed this year for $250,000. Brooks, do you have any idea when we're going to start that? I think we were talking about fall.
Yeah, we're the engineering group is putting the RFQ together right now. So yeah, this summer into this fall, we'll get that completed.
Okay, great. And that'll be, as we've told you before, with a different contractor. We may see some changes in our data based on new methodology. Okay, and then these next 2 or 3 pages, Council, I'm not going to go over, but they get into a little more detail about how we prioritize infrastructure replacements. And so, Nancy, if you want to go to the top of page 48, I think it is. No, 49, yep. So here's just a little different look. That chart at the top looks at not streets like we did earlier, but parks, trails, and recreational facilities, and sort of how we assess the factors surrounding those projects and then schedule them out in time. And this may or may not be interesting reading, I don't know, but it's just a little bit different look at a different category of projects. And as you peruse these things, if you have questions either now or in the future that we can help answer, we're happy to do that. Trying to show the method to the madness, I guess. Okay, so that's kind of a quick look at our at our general fund, and we're ready to go now to our capital construction fund, page 74. The pages between what you just saw and 74 will give you a detailed, full page on every project that you just saw in that summary sheet. So the Capital Construction Fund is also supported largely by taxes, basically, like the general fund is. There are also some grants and a few other stray sources of funding here. General fund reserves can also be one of those sources of funds for projects in the Capital Construction Fund. The reason we put them here and not in the general fund is because they tend to occur over multiple years, and so this allows us to kind of look at them in time in one place, I guess. You will see in here Station 1, Fire Station 1 dorm remodel. Your fire chief is really excited that we're going to rebudget these funds so that he can move on to replace the 1970s era paneling in Fire Station 1 dormitories, as are your fire people. So that project continues to be there, and if Dan were here, he'd tell you all about it. We're also, as you see, finishing up the Municipal Operations Center under Public Works. And there was one other I wanted to highlight for you. We already talked about Bill 9, where it says USAC Street Project. Then where you can see we have $4.2 million allocated to that project right now. And then I also wanted to highlight the 3rd Street and Bill Nye Avenue traffic control signal for $395,853. Council, you recall that was a project that we'd agreed to work with the developer who readied the Maverick site for development on installation of this traffic signal. And so we're holding a place in our budget for that. And I don't know if there's anything current moving on that project. I know engineering has been working with the Maverick folks to secure the final little bit of land or easement that we need in order to move forward with that. But if anyone has anything current they want to add, they're welcome to. But we are hoping to get that project accomplished this year. Okay, next page. Again, this is just looking again at some prioritization factors, and I guess I won't skip over the Capital Construction Fund revenue. summary, which is that top chart. This is where you'll see real detail, and I skipped over it on the general fund, but you can go back to that, but where you can see the detail of, for instance, the Municipal Operations Center right in the middle of that top chart. You'll see all of the revenue by type that went into this project. So, for instance, we had SLIB, State Land Investment Board, consensus funding of $975,000, $305,000 from the general fund, the $3 million loan, the building authority lease, and the water fund, wastewater fund, and solid waste fund contribution. You'll be able to see that for every project in that fund. And there's a similar chart for each of your funds, just so you know. Constituents ask, how did you pay for that? That's where you'll find the answer. Okay, page 76 is just more showing of how we prioritize the projects. And so, for instance, the Harney street enhancements, you know, they meet external partnership advantages, I should say, and then also a safety issue driving that, and there are city council goals. So that gives you kind of an overview of where each project falls. That's your capital construction fund. In total, $35,633,798 is being recommended for 2 bienniums in the capital construction fund. And then we're ready to look at the specific purpose tax fund, unless you have capital construction fund questions. Okay, seeing none, here's your SPT projects. As you recall, Council, the voters approved the specific purpose tax in 2018, and they did identify how these monies would be spent by project type. So, for instance, I'm looking at the chart at the bottom of the list, bottom of the page, aquifer protection category. This project, the Aquifer Protection Reserve, fell within the ballot language the voters approved. As did the next blue shaded row of city facility improvements, community and gateway enhancements, and then parks are shown here. All of these approved by the voters. Not in amount, but by project type. Aaliyah and Jennifer, is there anything you guys want to add on SPT?
Not at this time, Janine.
Okay, great. Continuing on the next page, you'll see the remainder of the specific purpose tax fund projects that we're recommending in this biennium, 22 and 23 and 24. There you go, rebudget. I'll note too, Council, part of the issue, and the reason I asked Malia and Jennifer to weigh in here, is they do a lot of work projecting out the rate of tax monies or tax receipts flowing in on the specific purpose tax, and so it's a pretty complex calculus that they go through to try to figure out what amount of funding we will have for bonded and unbonded projects and in what period of time those dollars will roll in.
I have a question. I was trying to remember how the specific purpose tax is worded on the ballot. So it's a certain amount of money. So when we reach that amount of receipts, then it's over, or is it a certain time period? Thank you.
Aaliyah, you want to take that one?
Yeah. Councilor Doherty, it's based on a certain amount. And I think in our, I'm trying to think what page it was on, that we have it, what the ballot said in this capital book, and I can look for it and send it to you, but it's every you know, the streets had 24 million, let's say. Everyone has a different amount. So when we reach that, then the tax ends. So it's not the time. And, you know, we're collecting faster than we thought we were. You know, I think it's ahead of schedule. Then we're getting a little more money than what we were projecting to begin with. A lot of it's on the online sales, and we had some one-time, you know, the wind turbine brought in. It affected the 6 penny also. So those sort of things are helping us collect it quicker. And then we can have more money to spend on projects actually also.
Thank you.
Council, at the bottom of that page, 88 there, you'll see project-related revenue. And so while we use often the specific purpose tax collections to maybe seed a project, we often contribute to those projects from, say, general fund, as you'll see there under the city building renovation project category. We also receive private donations sometimes to augment the SPT dollars, like you'll see under the Rotary Club's park at Grandview Heights, where the $25,000, I believe it was, donation from the Rotary Club is shown. And like with Kiowa Park, we also often pursue grants, like the ACRB grant shown there, and the Land and Water Conservation Fund grant, to try to stretch those SPT corpus dollars as far as we can. Next page will just again show you the prioritization factors for projects in the specific purpose tax category. And then on the next page in the streets and storm drainage category.
Councilors, if you go back to page 29, the 2018 specific purpose tax is outlined by type, so you know exactly what the ballot said for everything.
Yep, there it is. Thanks, Malia.
Which you just showed us a couple of minutes ago, so I should have been able to remember that fact. Thank you.
No, honestly, Councilor Doherty, I kind of glossed over that part of that page, so no worries. Thanks for the page reference, Malia. And then I think if there are no questions on SPT, other questions, then we're ready for our last page and our last fund, which is the Recreation Center Fund on page 70. So Council, as you know, we talked earlier about just the need for maintenance and replacement of aging equipment on our buildings. You'll see for the Recreation Center Fund, we have a number of projects starting with the pool boiler replacement. We will be rebudgeting $50,000 to finish out that project. It in total costs $90,000. But as far as new money that I'm recommending, not rebudgeted money, the rooftop unit over the pool natatorium does need replaced. We're estimating the cost at $350,000 and carrying that forward from fiscal 22. But as you can see, we'll have a second one to replace 2 years out in fiscal 24. Those are kind of, I guess the way I would put it, those rooftop units on the rec center are the real beefed up version of what we need here at City Hall in our air handling units, and what Todd spoke to you about earlier this evening as far as where we're seeing price and availability being difficult in certain circumstances. So we're hoping that that $350,000 is going to get us what we need for each of those units. We also have a family fitness workout area where we're recommending some investment to create this space. And again, there's more detail on subsequent pages about that space. But I believe this was an outcome of the facility analysis that we had our consultant do, where they indicated that the recreation center, really should be kind of a gathering place and be a welcoming space for instance, families wanting to engage in family fitness across generations. Feel free to jump in if you would like anywhere. Here's the more toned down building rooftop units that are not quite as beefed up as the natatorium units, but you can see we're on par to need to replace one of those every year beginning in the second year of this biennium, fiscal 23, or excuse me, in the first year of this biennium, fiscal 23. Then we've got some lighting upgrades we need to make, and some basically just addressing wear and tear on the fitness studio and multi-purpose room. And we'll need to be kind of just making an investment every year to address literally wear and tear on those newer rooms. So in total, what's being recommended for fiscal 23 is $137,100, and in fiscal 24, $415,000. To keep up the recreation center, which is now, some 20 years old and starting to show its age a little bit and needing a little bit of investment to keep it looking good. Did you want to add anything on rec center?
Janine, you did a good job covering that. And to further expound on those more expensive rooftop units, they're in the aquatics area, which requires significant dehumidification in order to make sure that that building envelope doesn't collapse or generate mold or develop other bacteria related to water intrusion. So there is a significant difference in those units. And we had originally intended to maybe replace 2 units a year with those $50,000 rooftop units, and now we're anticipating it only being 1.
Thanks, Todd. That was a good reminder that we did scale back our replacement on those units based on revenue and based on our availability of funding. You'll see that we also here, wherever we can, have tried to stretch our recreation center revenue generated through admissions and whatnot, stretch that using, for instance, Albany County Recreation Board grants for the pool boiler replacement and the family-friendly workout area. And then also the grant from Rocky Mountain Power that we believe we will be able to get for some of the lighting upgrades to help pay for those.
Yeah.
Then you can see, oh, go ahead, Todd.
And if I could add, that Rocky Mountain Power piece is part of that WattSmart program that Rocky Mountain puts out. We've done one project under that and had good success, and we're looking forward to not only the lighting upgrades at the Recreation Center, but lighting upgrades at the Ice and Event Center being beneficiaries of that WattSmart program provided through Rocky Mountain Power.
Thanks, Todd. And then at the bottom, Council, there's your prioritization factors. And I think what's notable about everything that we are recommending for this biennium is it all but one of the projects meets condition assessment, meaning we have wear and tear, we have things that are breaking down, like that need to be replaced. The only project that did not meet the condition assessment category was the family-friendly workout area, which was based on amount of use, meaning there's heavy use for an amenity of this nature, and then also public input that we heard through the facility analysis study, and then industry trends also that the facility analysis study identified for us. So really what's driving our capital investment out there is just an aging facility and keeping it up. Those are costs we did not have when the recreation center was brand new. But yeah, it's starting to need some TLC. That's our presentation for tonight. You all look weary of budget, so I think our timing to end is probably good.
Well, let's see if we have any over questions, starting with the last portion of the discussion. Let's see, we've got Councilor Schuster.
Thank you very much. As much as a comment as anything, they talked about the lighting upgrades and what Rocky Mountain Power is doing for you. I hope every business in town contacts them and asks them about that, because it is a partial grant too, so we're going to get a heck of a deal on that. And the cost savings on your electricity every month, I know several businesses in town here that are working with them. So, and also I'll talk about this old guy on council. My name is on the plaque of building this rec center. Got one of the golden shovels to break ground with it. So very happy of what that rec center has done for us here in this community. Thank you.
Yes, Jen Wade.
Thanks, Honorable Mayor. I'd just like to point out for the council, a few years ago, gosh, I don't remember if it was 4 or 5 years ago, we made the decision to actually split out the presentation of the budget into a recommended capital investment plan, which we distribute to the council earlier, and then the full recommended budget, which comes out about a month later. And so as we go through these capital budget work sessions, it always feels to me like incomplete, because it's truly a supplement to the recommended budget. And that's why we're not spending a lot of time tonight talking about funding. You've seen some high-level revenue tables that are only related to capital. And we've chimed in a little bit as appropriate to provide more information about funding, but I want to assure you that that higher level look is coming in the recommended budget. And that publication will be distributed at the end of this month, and those work sessions will be in May. But because of the size of the capital investment plan, we really felt like it was a better decision for the council and members of the community to get that publication out earlier and to have these work sessions sooner in the budgeting process. And I wanted to make sure I articulated that for some of our newer council members.
No, thank you. And I think the budget format that's been presented is a good one, and I think the council actually finds it a little bit digestible done this way. So, for what it's worth, from council perspective, I think I see a lot of nodding heads. And Councilor Schmeckel, who's go through the first budget round, and if he's giving you an indication that this is a good format, I think that boost confidence that this is a good way to do that. And for those of us that went through, I guess it was the 20 that are still here with you now, the 20 format versus what we've done the last couple of times, this is an improvement. And I think frankly, I think it needs that much time. And then as we get into that other part of it, these earlier work sessions allow us to kind of have callbacks to some of these things that you present us with now, and that's also helpful. So I think it's absolutely on the right track format-wise, but kind of appreciate you covering that again. Well, I saw a hand or two up. I'm sorry. I don't remember who it was, so you'll have to.
I had my hand up just to say thank you for presenting it like this in a very digestible form. And I'm also very excited that we have a place for Optimus dogs. The Optimus Dog Park.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, we've clearly got a need for lots of off-leash dog spaces if you've been reading your emails. So, we need to keep that stuff in mind. And city manager, I don't know that it's. I'm not going to speak for anybody else. I don't know that it's weird. It's just a lot of information to go through. Some of us more questions about some sections of it than others, and it just changes depending on the thing that we're talking about. And as you've noted several times throughout the presentation, some of these are sort of long-standing, and we're relatively familiar with them because we've heard a great deal about them over a number of years. So we're just tracking progress with some of these items. And so it could be the case that there aren't so many questions about that because they've been asked and answered over the years as well. More than it is that we're not engaged with it. It's a familiarity with some of them, and it's just sort of an update for us because they have been long-term projects. I don't know that you were particularly worried about that, but for what it's worth, I think there's an element of that in some of the budget presentation as well. Vice Mayor?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And this question is for Janine, and maybe I'm not remembering correctly, but I recall conversations related to Fire Station 1 and the shape that it was in, and potentially the need, a long-term need of a rebuild or a remodel of Fire Station 1. I even remember when we were looking at the North 4th Street facility, the possibility of potentially moving Fire Station 1 north a few blocks to give them a better facility there. So am I remembering some of this right? I mean, have we looked at that facility in terms of maybe one of our next big projects? Is that on the horizon, or do we think it's in pretty good shape? I notice we're getting some upgrades in the facility, and I know they're not hugely expensive and can buy us some time, but I'm just wondering where we are on that thought process.
Through you, Mayor, Vice Mayor. So a couple of things. We did do a study of our fire service. It's now probably 6-7 years old. That study said that the city might be not before, back then it said within 10 or 15 years, and of course we're halfway there now. And it all depended on growth. But the study did say that we would probably need to add a fire station to our inventory, so to speak, before too long. And so as part of preparing our Turner Tract lands in a conceptual way, we did reserve some space out there for what we called an institutional or maybe municipal government use as a potential future fire station. The study said that would be needed because at that point we were seeing so much development to the east of town on the Turner Tract, and it just made sense to have a fire station staging area more close to those residential developments that were newly going in on the Turner Tract. So we have a reserve of land in the Turner Tract. We also have, just to get specifically to Station 1, we have thought over the years if that it's really our historical station, if, it's lived its useful life, so to speak, and could be put to some better use. And I will tell you, I don't feel, for my purposes, that answer has been adequately addressed right now. We have made some fairly substantial investments in Fire Station 1, such as replacing the bay floor a few years ago because it is older, was insufficient to hold up, literally, the enormous equipment that we store in there. So we do have some sunk costs into that building that are pretty fresh. Where we haven't really made any investment is into those living quarters that our staff live in. So this dormitory remodel for $150,000 is not very expensive, but it's going to go a long way to make for a much better environment for our folks when they're on their 48-hour shifts. I'm kicking the can a little bit on the bigger question of whether Station 1 is something we should look at, relocating, or because I just don't know the answer, to be honest with you. But I don't think it's something, I'll tell you, that staff haven't thought about. And we've even had some conversations as we look at remodeling City Hall about what happens to Fire Station 1. If your fire chief was here, I will tell you this. I think that he would tell you that the central location of Fire Station 1 has certain value to it, even if it's a fairly small station. We get some of our best response times across the community coming out of this site. So that's something you always have to think about if you were going to relocate it. And you're correct, Vice Mayor Pierce, there was some light conversation as we were conceiving of North 4th Street about whether a fire station there would make sense. I think the final plan, though, landed on that not being a preferred use, at least for the North 4th Street corridor where the city's properties are located adjacent to the park there. Doesn't mean maybe some surrounding property might not be a suitable location if we wanted to move the location of Station 1.
Thank you.
Other questions? Certainly a lot more information to come. And as was noted for you several times, if you need to follow up in more detail on some of these things, all the staff has said do that, and you'll get your information as they're able to find it. Just in this first initial work session on the budget alone, we've covered a vast amount of information covering a huge number of topics of concern for us. So it's natural that follow-up might be the way to do your questions than relying on your ability to come up with all of your most important needs in terms of information tonight. But I know you all know that. So, City Manager, given that, and I don't see other hands popping up right now, I guess we can probably close the work session.
Absolutely. And if you do all have questions, Mayor, councilors, you can send those to Jennifer Wade, to Malia Brown, to myself. We'll make sure and get an answer for you, okay?
Of course, and thank you. Next on our work session agenda is public comments, and we'll see if we have any. We do have some attendees that have been with us. And those can be on or off work session topic, I suppose. All right, seeing none. Move on and gets into city council updates and council comments. And first come, first serve. It is that time of the month when there haven't been meetings yet. Okay, 2 hands up at the same time. Vice Mayor.
Hey, thank you, Mayor. I've got 2 planning commission meetings to update on, I believe. So regarding planning commission, the meeting that happened on 3/28, there were, my notes are correct here, 5 different items that were discussed. One of which is another daycare coming into the community, an approval of a hoop house for veggies and gardening, another oversized accessory building, a plot withdrawal, and a talking about an incinerator greenhouse having to do with the slaughterhouse. All were approved by Planning Commission. Then last night's Planning Commission meeting, we learned that our chair of the committee is resigning. He's moving. So we will have a new opening on Planning Commission. So give that some thought. I don't know if the application or the announcements are out yet, but we will have a opening on Planning Commission just when I thought we were good for a while. Of course it was, wishful thinking on my part. And then we had last night approval of a plat kind of north and east of town, where 45th is. And if we have anybody from planning here tonight, I think it was about roughly 130 units, if I'm remembering correctly, and I may have that wrong, but a nice single family development, and not necessarily breaking ground this construction season, but getting things in order to break ground next construction season. So maybe waiting for a little price stabilization. And that's really it for me. Oh, forgot, we did have a USAC meeting on March 21st. And I tried real hard to get the 45th Street project removed from that list, mostly because the Pilot Hill folks, and I think the changes to the plan with Pilot Hill is not going to be using kind of that north of Boulder 45th area, so there would really be no need for punching that road through all the very serious and areas related to the aquifer, but I was unsuccessful with that, and that's really it. So that's all I have.
All right, Councilmember Schuster.
Thank you. I'm probably going to be stealing Councilor Schmuckel's, but the last 2 days of the month, this will be our second annual Buffalo Bills Revenge long distance shooting out at the rifle range. The rifle range will be closed the last 2 days of this month, the first day of next month. Last year we had over 180 participants renting motel rooms and meals for 3 days, and was quite a significant uptick that weekend. We have at least that many registered this year. I believe it's June. I better skip ahead a little bit more. We're having a Veterans Foundation and open house during the just past the middle of the month, and there'll be competitions all the way down to smaller people, where we'll be having a BB gun shoot contest that will have range safety officers at it and everything else. There'll be several events that'll be free to the public, and it will be free to the public to attend. So a lot going out there this summer, and don't want to talk much about Finance Committee because that's not too exciting to talk about. It's always the first of every month. It went very uneventful. I wish I could have made the USAC meeting. And that's all my updates. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Harrington.
Thanks, Mayor. A couple quick updates. The Public Art Coalition is sort of gearing up for a pretty busy summer and is in consideration now of, and I should have more news for you in the coming weeks, but we're looking at, because of some grant funding and donations, they're looking to promote the executive director to a full-time position, which should increase the capacity of the coalition substantially, and then potentially bringing on an additional person to assist with like project event specific type work throughout the summer. The YO Theater, that group run through Main Street. I've been sitting on those meetings. They are working, exploring, I guess, an opportunity from a promoter group from Northern Colorado and Cheyenne called Bandwagon Presents, as well as one of the owners of that owns a theater in Greeley, and they're considering a partnership with that group to aid in the renovation and opening of the YO Theater, making it specifically a music venue. But I'm not sure if that will move forward or not, but that is something you all should, I guess, be in the know of. And then I'm sure many of you have read Pilot Hill received a substantial donation as well that will be used for build out. I'm a little late on the update on that one, but there you are. It's a pretty exciting opportunity from a private foundation, and will be significant in really getting those trails completed and in making that more usable and accessible in the sections that are meant to be accessible. So, Mr. Mayor, that is my quick updates for you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councilor Doherty.
Yeah, on April 22nd, the results of the Laramie Climate Action Task Force, which was a group of students, got people together from the city and the county and the university to discuss climate action in Laramie and things that we could do working together with these agencies that might be some ways to save money and make some change together. So there's going to be a presentation on Earth Day, April 22nd, from noon to 4 at UW Union, and I'll send the poster around. They ask, you can just show up, or you can, I think, attend online, but they ask people to pre-register in any case. So I'll send that around to you. And I missed USAC because I spaced it out, so I apologize. Wasn't any help there. Sorry.
Dates. General comments. Councilor Schuster.
Thank you. I don't know if everybody saw it, that Brett Glass sent a letter today, and he said that what we put forth in the renters' rights agreement has been altered a little bit. So I don't expect an answer tonight, but it kind of looks like maybe some of it was. So if we could get an update on that in 2 weeks or whatever, I would sure appreciate an update on that one. Thank you.
City Manager. Thank you, Councilor Schuster. City Manager.
I'm not aware of that correspondence. Could someone send it to me and I'll take a look at it?
Yep.
Get you a better response. Thanks.
Yep. Other comments? All right. We'll do a quick agenda review. Anything on the consent agenda? Nothing on the consent agenda, no suggestions, no requests for changes. Better now than at 6 o'clock next week. Yes, Councilmember O'Doherty.
I can't find the one that we were talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would like for 9K to move into the regular agenda because I would really like to put in an amendment about the separate metering.
Okay. And my only question with that is where would we like to place it? So that there's time to discuss the amendment. Yes, Vice Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I would like to see it in between 12 and 13. So, and we'll make it 12.5. And the reason for that is that has to do with the planning department, and that could then follow item 12, which is a planning department item.
Yes,
but I think we actually have to do it on the night of the meeting and make the request then. But that to me seems to be a reasonable spot for that.
I think we can change it now as long as it's posted by Friday, and I think the city clerk is going along with that. So,
okay.
So we, it doesn't necessarily have to be done in the pre-meeting. And it could. Do you want to give it a number and reorder? You want to make it 12A? I mean, that's more like what we would do if we were doing it quickly in the pre-meeting. We could just make it the new 12, and then just follow the rest of what you suggested.
Or the new 13 and bump everything down. Yeah. Whatever the city clerk wants to do works for me.
I bet she doesn't care. You decide, city clerk.
Thank you, Mayor. I would say if you just say that you want it to be after 12, then we'll go ahead and put it as the new 13 and bump everything down.
Thank you. Councilmember Schuster.
Thank you. I don't believe them on 21. I think they're fibbing to us again. I really think it'll be adjourned to executive session. I say it every week and everything, but I'm just going to pick on them again and state that it's going to happen now. That although I don't know, Bob will be back. Bob will be back because he's got a 2-week vacation. So I think he gets back Friday or this weekend or whatever. So it'll be a whole new setup. So yeah, I think we might as well count on that. Thank you.
Staff will just trust you to let us know as soon as you do whether or not there'll be an executive session, and we anticipate that there very probably could be. We'll keep our minds and hearts open to that prospect. Any other questions on the consent agenda? So we've moved 9K, that's going to be 13. We'll reorder accordingly. During the agenda review meeting yesterday, the Vice Mayor made some good quality suggestions about trying to group like items together, for instance, planning items, and try to cluster those so that they're sort of dealt with at the same time in the meeting. Yes, City Clerk.
I can't find my mute button when I'm sharing the screen. Mayor, I just wanted to make a note for the council. Per our email that we sent out this afternoon to survey you for a work session on the town and gown item. We have placed it on your scheduled meetings for May 4th. We realized that May 11th was already a scheduled work session for another topic. So we didn't want to give you 3 meetings in the same week. City manager didn't feel that was appropriate. So we have put that on May 4th. So I just wanted to note that for the council.
City manager, I can recall times when we've met 3 times in the same week. I'm not sure what the aversion to that is, but I kid. I think the 4th is fine. Can we all settle on the 4th this evening and just say, okay, we'll meet the 4th? Councilor Gabriel, I know sometimes you have some Wednesday stuff going on. Do you think you can do the 4th of May? The Wednesday?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. All right. So that's set. We'll plan on the 4th. May the 4th be with us. Okay. All right. Any other consent agenda? And I guess we'll just do regular agenda now. Like I said, the Vice Mayor made some, I think, worthwhile moves to try to group things together. There's a number of public works items, including one which could generate discussion and or public comment, which is
Mayor, I just had a question for the Vice Mayor.
Go ahead.
Vice Mayor, was the number 12 Indian Heights preliminary plat the one that you were talking about, the development northeast?
You know, I believe it was.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Although I don't have that actually written down in my notes, but I believe it was.
Great. Thank you.
So item number 17 could be one that develops into some conversation. This is the restrictions regarding the stopping. I guess that word is standing. Sorry, my screen is real shrunk down. Stopping, standing, or parking of vehicles, trailers, and recreational vehicles. And then there could be some additional discussion for item number 18 as well. You might note that we received a public comment about that in your email as well. And we'll have a presentation discussion about that item. And so those were moved towards the bottom of the agenda just to make sure that those things that would go quicker, we'd get done at the top of the meeting, and then those things that would possibly, not guaranteed, but possibly take more discussion at the end of the meeting, like we do. So I don't see any other discussion. So I guess we consider that agenda set for the time being, keeping in mind that changes can always happen. All right. If there isn't anything else, we can say good night and good luck. Thank you all very, very much. And staff members, we'll be seeing more of you soon during our budget journey. Okay. Have a good night.